5:30. I'd like to call the study session to order. At this time, we'll open the floor for any public comment, which I don't see any public. Next on the agenda is the roundtable discussion amongst council members. Does anyone have anything that they'd like to discuss? Delora, come on, you always have. Bill,
I have a question.
ask away.
In the HDC. Let's say that house on the corner down there that they want to just demolish becomes an empty lot. And that empty lot, the person wants to put in there a manufactured home, which is fine. The one on Marshall Street looks very nice and it blends with the neighborhood very well. But then I have seen other ones that don't blend so well. What is in our ordinances to stop something like that from happening so that it would be blended into the neighborhood? That's what the HDC does. In that case, there's nothing to stop it from happening. They could put it in there sideways like they did up on Russell Street. Is there anything, Joel? That's what I thought.
Not in our current ordinances.
So
Thank you. Just a
sorry,
point
sorry.
for people to think of.
Yeah, and I totally understand, and that concerns me as well. Our hope, I guess, is that we do away with what's not working, and then concerned citizens or someone steps in, and then we create a new entity that is much smaller and much more manageable.
I guess I don't understand. We have something in place right now that takes into consideration our historical areas. And it has the option that if the home is contributing as a historical building, then they have to do what's historical for that home. If it's not a contributing building within that district, they can do whatever they want to do. Why do we want to destroy that if it's there already? I mean, I don't understand.
I was just going to say that I know that house on Marshall, when I was at the Historic District Commission meeting when that came forward, and my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, was that we don't have anything for like newer builds. So we were just kind of lucked out with that it fit in with the neighborhood. HDC didn't have anything as far as input with that. They were kind enough to come forward because it was in the historic district, but they could have put anything that, was within our zoning ordinances in that lot because it was a new construction. So like if they are to demolish that lot there and they came forward to HDC, they wouldn't really be able to dictate what they could put in there because it was a
So
new construction.
HDC has nothing to say about any new construction whatsoever within its district,
That was my understanding from that meeting.
still. I know David sat on it at that time, so.
Yeah, the current deficiency is that we don't have defined for each district what that look and feel of the district is. And in that case in particular, we were given kind of just pictures from the internet and then asked to make an approval based off that as opposed to a final plan. And I think that was really a deficiency in the process as well. So it illustrated a number of the issues with the HDC.
So the HDC did have something to say with how it was to be taken care of then.
We certainly had authority for
Okay.
review there.
Well, like I said, it looks nice. They've done a good job with it, and it actually blends with the homes around there, so.
Yeah, and I thought that was a good learning moment in that I think the porch that's on there made a big difference for the look and feel. And we did talk about the match with the two houses next to it. The previous house had been 2 stories, but now it matches better with the 2 one-story houses next to it. So there was some discussion around that. But yeah, ultimately, the deficiencies that were shown were the lack of definition around what is the look and feel of each district, and then what's the approval process look like, and how do we lock people into this is exactly what you're gonna do.
Okay.
But we still, Dave, would we have had, so if they would have brought a TP forward to the historic district, did we have any ground to stand on to say,
Yeah, they certainly could have rejected a plan like that.
But the issue is that it has to fit in with the zoning, so they can't put a TP in there. But as long as.
okay, but I'm saying
Yeah.
something,
So,
I
and
mean,
I guess I will have to say that that's not how I understood that to happen. I remember them saying, we don't really have any jurisdiction over this, but we like the plans that you've brought forward. That they couldn't technically approve something or not because it was a newer build, but.
and that's what I thought, as long as it was within the zoning ordinance, the HDC really doesn't have a say.
I'm not sure that's true. I mean, the district itself is what is actually regulated, not individual buildings. And so if we'd had a definition around this is what's expected in that district, then we would have grounds to enforce it. We were
If
just-
we would have had, you say.
Yeah, that was a deficiency that was
Right,
identified.
right,
yeah.
but at this point, we don't have any of them.
Yeah, and that was part of the work that the HDC proposed doing for reforms, was defining what do those districts look like, what's the style of homes there.
Right.
So that's something that could be added to the current ordinance, not the whole thing taken away and then put something else together?
Yeah, that's a reform that could be made to, it's probably best in the guidelines as opposed to the ordinance, but it's certainly something that within the process of the HDC should be there and could be developed.
Thank you.
Do you have anything else, Dave? Or anything, I guess that wasn't your subject. Do you have anything for roundtable?
No, thank you.
Laura?
Nope.
I'm getting all no's on that end. I just have one thing that I want to mention. Just received a call from Scott Beltman on my way in. I think it's awesome how he's really trying to be involved, but he apologizes he can't be here tonight. It would have been his meeting. He had something else come up, but he did want to mention, and he said it doesn't really affect the city, but he would like to make us aware. On June 6th at 6 o'clock at the Zimmerman Room, which is in the Health Department out there, they're having a gathering, a meeting with some farmers to talk about putting solar panels on some of their properties. So if anybody's interested in how that's going or if it affects anybody, he did want to let us know that. If anybody has any questions for him, he's willing to get an email, phone call, whatever you might reach out to him with any concerns. So
Teresa, did
That
you
was-
know, is that the county's meeting with them, or is that consumers having a?
it is something with conservation, I believe.
So this will be the second meeting they've had. 3 years ago, they brought in members from Michigan State University Extension, and I want to say the Department of Agriculture. There's some studies that have been done by Michigan State on the height of solar panels that can be installed specifically in livestock fields that still allow for movement of livestock beneath the panels, and also placement of panels in between planting rows. So I think this is probably a follow-up meeting to that one, because there's quite a few farmers at that one. The fifth Monday of each month, the county does what's called a CVTS meeting, City, Village, Township meeting. And they just have a special workshop or meeting during those things, because a lot of the communities in Allegan County have their meetings on Monday nights. So that fifth Monday is usually free. So
Thank you, Joel.
you're welcome.
I was walking, so I couldn't make any notes, but I tried to remember. Okay. All right, if there's nothing else, staff, do you, I mean, this is supposed to be council members, but do you have anything else you'd like to, just in general, talk about?
I just want to, in regard to the historic district, and the house being built, I've had 3 complaints about the blue mobile home that the historic district approved on Marshall. So while some people say it looks fine, I've had residents come up to me and say, what are you doing to our community? So I think, it's always depends on one's perspective. And I would just push back. I think with so the way HDCs work, new construction, especially like a placement when it's a burn down rebuild, the HDC does very much have control over the design. Part of the Department of Interior standards is additions. You can't try to make an addition look like it's always been there. And there's actually a standard, and then Department of Interior standard. So if I was going to do an addition to my house, I'm in the historic district, I couldn't try to make it look like it was constructed in 1880 or 1890 or 1904, whenever my house was constructed. I would have to separate this, and this is experience I had in my previous role, where somebody wanted to do a stucco addition, and that HDC said, oh, no, you won't. It will be clapboard siding. And that HDC dug in their feet because they did not want that addition to look like it was part of the original build. So that's where you can get into the, HDCs can't really dictate new design, or they can dictate new design, but, they go a different direction. So if it's a new construction, HDC very much can say placement, location. And when you look at that block, there's a true single story, a 1.5 story, and a 2-story, all within that block. And I think that discussion, and Dave, you were on the commission at that time. I think that commission said, hey, what you're presenting to us looks similar to what's there. Because they made it also not a shotgun style house, but an elongated house with the front porch facing the street. You will run into concerns. I don't know if you will run into, but there are concerns about placement of, what I'm just gonna call mobile homes, elongated, that could look out of place. And even though our city attorney doesn't believe this is a defensible ordinance, in my previous town, we did have what was called an infill ordinance for all of our central neighborhoods, just south of the historic district, where if you wanted to do a new garage, or if you wanted to do a new residential structure or a commercial structure, you had to get approval for your design first. And that went across my desk, my boss's desk, and then when I became the boss, it went across my desk. And you had to get that approval before you got the building permit approved across the hallway. So we reviewed, new construction all the time outside the historic district in the city of Holland to make sure it was compatible with the neighborhood.
Sorry, which ordinance wasn't defensible?
What I wanted to do was an infill ordinance, which is what we had in Holland. And our city attorney, pushed back on that, saying if it's not historic preservation, he doesn't know what state law gives us the right to dictate aesthetics in a new construction, or, new construction. And maybe Holland just pushed the envelope a little bit and never got pushed back on. But you do run into that, and the historic district doesn't control every parcel inside the city of Allegan. I mean, when I first came here, one of the biggest complaints people told me was the house on the hill on Grand Street. Going out of the city, where they put that double wide overlooking the river. And it was like, don't ever let that happen again. And then if it's designed and built toward, to building code, it's hard to say no.
Was that, when they talked about that mobile home on Marshall Street, was that before the porch or after the porch?
I think the porch was offered by the homeowner, something they're gonna do, and
Yeah, but it did look like a mobile home before the porch was
Yeah.
added to it.
and the porch has been
I
added
also
now.
said, what did they do to us? And then the porch went up, and I go, oh, okay.
It looks better now? Sure,
Yep.
yeah. So the people who were complaining to me was before the porch was added.
That's
If that's the
probably
question
what
you're asking.
happened. Yep, that was the question.
Okay, so next on the agenda is the review of the downtown infrastructure and streetscape project update report.
All right, so that was submitted in your packet. You can see where we are so far with this project. Things are moving along, as with all construction projects. There's a hiccup here and there. As you noted in the packet, the schedule is being updated by Milbacher. They have submitted their Gantt chart to us. I converted their Gantt chart to what I call a simplified schedule that you see in that packet. I believe it's on page 2. I sent that chart out, or that schedule, that simplified schedule out to the contractor and the engineer and staff to make sure I didn't mess up any of the dates. Once that was sent out this afternoon, once they approve it, I'll add that schedule to this. But at this time, we are moving forward with a wrap-up of November 15th. Not sure, often you guys talk to some of the business owners down on the riverfront. What we have shared with them is there are going to be ongoing logistical issues that we are going to have to address throughout this project. Case in point, once Hubbard is ripped up all the way and the riverfront's ripped up, right now Tantric receives their food deliveries by semi-truck pulling, this is a 53-foot sailor, semi-trucks. This is the big trucks. It goes down the riverfront, it turns around in the cul-de-sac, and then it unloads, and it goes back up the riverfront, or back up the ramp. That won't be plausible when Hubbard is ripped up and when the riverfront is ripped up. So we're gonna work out a central location for them to drop off their goods, and then they're gonna have to hand truck it down the sidewalks. I told the owners of Tantric, if they run into a pinch and they need some extra bodies to carry stuff, give me a call and I'll come and help carry stuff. We are working with the property owners along Brady Street for trash pickup right now, because we told them just wheel their Herbie Kirby's across the grass area on the riverfront to the cul-de-sac. Well, that worked until we decided to rip up the cul-de-sac in June. So we're gonna have to come up with a new plan for them. So Parker's working with them right now on a new plan. Tibbetts is adding a deck to the back of their buildings along the riverfront, which was approved by the HDC last year. So I met with them today at 2 o'clock and their builder, Tony Koopman, to figure out a plan for them to move forward with their project. It looks like they're gonna be able to get that done because they're starting within a week, and we won't be to that riverfront for a couple weeks. So that works out good. Bridge Fest has been redesigned already. We are moving forward with Bridge Fest. And July 3 Jubilee has been redesigned already, and we're moving forward with July 3 Jubilee. Still everything down here in the downtown, and we believe we found a parade route that works for July 3 Jubilee, which makes me happy because I like 4th of July parades. So, is there anything, Mr. Parker, about this project we need to bring to their attention? All right. If you hear stuff, encourage people to contact us.
The bank.
The bank? Oh, yeah, so Huntington Bank, yeah, because you were in there.
I saw you.
Thank you. One thing we will not do is, one thing we don't want to do is close off our only drive-through bank downtown Allegan. I mean, that's where people access money. So we are working with the bank and our engineers to circulate traffic through the parking lot here. And then we're going to create what I'm going to call just a temporary ramp, like a speed bump, speed table, speed hump, whatever you want to call it, from our parking lot into their drive-through. So we met with the branch manager, that would have been last Friday?
I don't remember. Thursday, I think.
Okay, last Thursday. We went down there and met with them. We got a parking lot, what I'm going to call a traffic plan for this parking lot back here that works. Our engineers have reviewed it. The contractors reviewed it, and they're going to, install painted arrows tomorrow in this parking lot to direct traffic, because we're going to close off the entrances off Hubbard eventually. So all those kind of logistical things that will continue to come up over the next, 9 months that we will be flexible and we will respond to accordingly.
I was just gonna see how the lowdown took it, the downtown lowdown. Was it well-attended, and that was a idea accepted by most?
Yeah, there was a good turnout at that meeting on Tuesday morning, and then after we got to talk about it, and that group setting, an email went out on Friday after we got the finalized schedule from Bill Bacher with further detail. So we shared that with the 80-plus recipients in there as a follow-up. Well received. General, I think, trepidation as expected, but excitement to get it done and over with in 1 year's time. So lots of questions, which we worked through and were able to answer. And like Joel said, he gave a few examples, but lots of coordination that needs to happen with businesses on Hubbard, Locust, et cetera. So.
Thank you, Parker. Anything else you wanted to say on the infrastructure, Joel, or the?
Just if you hear stuff, feel free to don't feel free, please direct them to us. We're here to, serve the public and answer any questions they may have about the project.
Perfect. Any questions about that for Joel? Okay. Next on the agenda is the review of the Griswold Auditorium policies and procedures.
I'll handle this one.
Thank you.
And Joel can chime in as he would like. So included in your packet were a few different documents. The Regional Asset Subcommittee Group, made up of council members Hanse, Redding, and Mayor Pro Tem Byrd, have been meeting. My furthest back email with this group was in January of 2022, but I think there might have been a couple meetings that this group met with just Joel prior to my involvement and Ryan's involvement. So it's been about a year of work on and off to develop. The first aspect included in your packet was what we refer to as our regional asset framework that we developed this time around for specifically the Griswold Auditorium. This framework will work similarly when we tackle the Regent Theater, the Padgham Field Airport, and the sports complex, all defined with the Griswold as being a regional asset that the city of Allegan owns and operates. So this specifically, like I said, has Griswold Auditorium details, and then also included in your packet was a new document of policies and procedures that was written up for the Griswold Auditorium use, and then a revised rental contract. It just kind of updated. I mean, within the last couple of years, this council has reviewed a rental form for the Griswold. What this new version does, this updated version, just kind of addresses some of the issues that were noted as staff meets with folks for renting the Griswold, to kind of tweak those things and then reflect better what was included in the policies and procedures document as well. So I guess if there are questions of council members, I'm happy to answer them, but also council members Hanse, Byrd, and Redding can chime in as well as they feel.
Did anybody have any questions regarding the packet that they read?
I have one. I was talking with someone, Art what moved out to the grill house.
The Art in the Garden?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's hosted by
It was
the
at
Arts
Griswold.
Council. Okay.
I was told by the lady running that it was gonna cost them over $1,000 to rent a Griswold for that particular thing.
So I don't know at what point they moved out to the grill house and silo
Yeah, I
area,
can't remember either.
because that was, I believe, prior to my time here at the city. Right now, Bill, rates for, I mean, it's broken down by room. If the group were to utilize the full building,
That's probably what it is.
yeah, that includes the ground, the bottom level banquet room, the auditorium, which I don't think they would need.
That wouldn't be in there.
But that cost is, on a weekend, $1,800 for full use of the building. But that's everything, top floor, main level, ground level. If they're looking at just using the banquet room, that bottom level, weekend rental for 6 hours is $750. If they needed it,
Probably both up and lower, but
Yeah.
not the,
gotcha. Then yeah, it's likely that it would be over $1,000. I don't
that was a
know,
big loss as far as I'm concerned. getting-
Sure, yeah.
Having that leave the city.
I don't know what kind of agreement the Arts Council has with the silo or the grill house, but I know that when we put together these rates, it's very comparable to other area avenues. I don't know what word I'm looking for here.
No,
But anyway,
but for the silo, we're not comparable. We're much cheaper than the
Much, yeah.
much cheaper. The silo,
So that's where
to
they have it now,
rent that is thousands.
That's what I was just saying. I can't believe the silo's any cheaper than $1,000.
And that's why they might have a different agreement with the Arts Council. But we looked at prices for the silo, for the Robinson Manor, the Gathering Place, closer toward Otsego, and the Griswold. All of these rates that are on the rental form are cheaper than any of those.
So that's something I should ask the meeting I'm having Wednesday with the group of girls that I'm with, guys.
Yeah, that would be great.
And Bill, they can always petition too,
Correct.
like other
Oh,
organizations
that's-
have, but
I sometimes take a grain of salt with what I hear from people, obviously, but that's why I ask questions and check.
No, we would love, obviously, it's no secret, we would love to have groups either return to the Griswold for use in their events or, begin having their events there. Ryan and I are working with the Education Foundation about their murder mystery dinner, which used to be held at the Griswold and now takes place at the Blessed Sacrament Church. So we would like to bring that back as well as other things, so. And hopefully by better defining our, rental rates and procedures and, how we're going to allow groups to utilize that space, that'll encourage those people to come back.
Is there ways that they can do that other than having to petition the council to do all of this stuff?
As far as a reduced rate,
Yeah, that's the only way they can do that.
Yeah, that'd be a good question for the council.
yeah,
And those that were on the asset committee list, or asset committee.
As a business person, I was always having to make adjustments with my pricing, and that's why I'm just wondering if it's something, don't look at me like that.
I could do it, if I knew I could negotiate.
No, you know you can.
I bought it 4 years ago.
You know you could, but anyways, that's why I was asking those questions, is if
Sure.
it's negotiable, other than going through the council,
understood.
because that would take them time, and a month later, they get their answer, so.
In just knowing that when I started in this role, that there were different agreements for different groups that used the Griswold for the same thing, the same room, if you will, or the same amount of time. And everybody had, like I said, a different agreement with the city. And that was something that we at the time had made an effort to move away from. So I can understand and appreciate, having to deal with different groups differently, but I wonder if that leads us down a similar path to where we've got all of these different agreements with different people kind of thing, and how
It's
that
hard then
affects.
to get your head wrapped around which
Right,
one's which,
yeah.
so.
And how that affects other relationships with different groups that are wanting to use the Griswold.
Well, thank you for that, now,
Yeah, no, thank you.
time she says something about that, I'll find out, so.
Sure, great.
Yeah, I mean, just kind of going on what you were talking about, Parker, that was part of our concern, is that it has just been, it felt like haphazard, and so I think, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think part of our thinking was that we wanted to set this as the bar. If somebody really feels like they want or need a different rate, then they can come and petition council, but that was the only avenue, and so it kind of takes that pressure off staff, if you will, that there's not a negotiation, like these are the prices, and council could make a change if there was a nonprofit, or if there was somebody trying to do something that wasn't a moneymaker, but we're trying to set a baseline for staff to work off of. Is that fair?
I think that was actually a council-driven initiative, like outside of even the subcommittee, because I remember discussing
yeah.
it at council level last year, or the year before.
Yeah, I think you're right. Thanks.
Yeah, because we were trying to be consistent,
We were getting a lot
Instead
of
of-
requests.
right?
Yeah.
Yep.
yeah, we discussed having like a fee reduction policy, and that was brought up multiple times, but when we reduced the rates for the other spaces, it kind of became a moot point.
Yeah. And I will say, I mean, the Griswold has been booked for multiple different events since we've, had these conversations at the council level. And there have been times when groups have come to ask for a reduction, but we've been booking that building without issue for other things, so. New ones too. I mean, there was a medium that came in, she rented the auditorium, and had no issue with the cost and rented it out and sold tickets and held her event, and that was well attended, so. Seems to be working.
One item I see, we have that paid checkbox on the form,
Yeah.
but we don't have deposit paid versus paid in full.
Oh, yeah.
We want to have two boxes there just so that, since it just says paid, it's like, is it paid in full or is it just the deposit?
It's a good note.
Thank you, Parker.
Make sure that we get our money
Thank you, yes.
and not just half of it.
Has there been any more, like, discussion from, I know that one company we were trying to contract with for comedy shows and things like that didn't go very well in
No.
the end, but has there been any other interest shown, or are we?
For stand-up comedy, no, nothing, no other leads at this time.
Anything else? Any further discussion?
Yeah, so make sure you discuss it, because our plan is at your next meeting, this is gonna be an action item on your agenda to approve the new policy and the new rental agreement, and then we are going to enact it as staff.
I think it's well done. I would approve it as written. I like that we're taking a cut of the ticket sales, and then it gets into the food and beverage categories. I thought it was very well done overall, so.
Yeah, I thought it looked fine too. I didn't have any issues.
I think it's outstanding.
Thank you, Councilor.
Well,
Mayor Pro Tem Burke, excuse me.
Well done, staff and asset committee.
Okay, so like Joel said, this will be an action item on your next agenda, hopefully, and then we'll continue to work with the Regional Asset Group and tackle those other entities, like I mentioned, the Region Theater, the Padgham Field Airport, and the sports complex are next on the horizon. So you'll see something similar for each of those.
I have a question if we're done with that discussion. Kind of, I guess, along the same line. Who's responsible to open the sports complex?
So, unlock the gate,
Yes,
that would be the Department of Public Works, and then the police department locks it.
okay.
Is there an issue?
Just, they failed Saturday morning.
At what, oh, that would be the police department.
o'clock
Yep,
in the
That's
morning.
the police department then. On the weekends, it's the police department's job.
Okay.
And so they were not open for baseball games and soccer games then?
They were not, but luckily, one of the coaches knew the police officer on duty and
I'll
gave
call,
him a
I'll
call.
text our chief right now and let him know.
Okay. I'm sure that probably the police officer on duty probably let him know, but they had to call him. Otherwise, somebody wouldn't have known who to call.
Yep.
So. And there was a game at 8 o'clock. I know. So Saturday. Yeah. And little bitty tykes too, they're just, you know. Is there anything else? All right. Wow, it is 6:04. We will,
I could real quick
Adjourn.
just say that, try to prolong it a little bit, that the ordinance group met on last Thursday. Was that right? Last Thursday? And we met with Joel and Michaela and Nick Curcio remotely. So we went through chapters 1 through 11, excluding 6, because of, that was the animal ordinance we'd already put into effect. So I felt like a lot of the concerns that we had, Nick really spoke to those. Bill, we did make a change in the fees. Honestly, it was just the first level. And talking to Nick, he said they were pretty comparable, but we went up $75 the first level, and then that will double to $150 the next, and then double to $300 the following. Is that right, Michaela? So there was a small increase that will be in that ordinance coming forward.
One of the things that bothered me was, when is it the first level, second level, or third level? There are places I know where the city has contacted 87 times, and I don't know if there's been fees or things done with.
And we had a little bit of a side conversation about that, just with the way that the ordinances are enforced, and I know we've talked about it before, is, you know, our chief has explained that he kind of takes more of a soft approach. And I guess if that's something that we want to see done differently, then as a council, we need to let that department know that they need to take action after a first warning or something. And I know Michaela's doing some tracking of all of that, contacts now, so that's just something that we're gonna have to give direction to Joel to direct the department, is what I would gather. But yeah, I know that that's been something that we've all discussed before, and that's been a real concern of yours for quite some time, Bill, so.
It is, and I've had people come to me and say, well, I was at this community, and, you know, the first time they, like Michaela contacts them, the second time they give them the ticket, you know. I don't think we do that. I don't think we do it on the 18th time, so, I mean, that's, why do we have ordinances if we're not gonna use them? I just don't understand. But thank you for all your work, Laura. It's been,
Yeah, so I mean, we've got a lot of time right now, if people wanted to discuss that, to see if there's some direction that we want to give staff on how to approach ordinance enforcement, whether it's a first warning, the next time citation, or they get 2 warnings and a citation, or if we continue the way it is, which is more of a, like I said, a soft approach, or a little bit more of a hands-off approach. And I know Jay's doing it to be kind and courteous and understanding, and I can appreciate that, but I can also appreciate the other side of it.
correct. There has to be a in-between. You know, too soft isn't anything accomplishing.
Are we talking just about blight?
I think all the ordinances, Blight's one of them. Blight's the worst one, I think.
I thought Jay normally said if he saw progress, then he wasn't, pushing, to ticket. It was more if I don't see progress, then I start using the tools that I have, which are the writing tickets, et cetera, which I'm fine with that kind of approach. You gave them a warning. If they're making progress on it, okay, but if they're just not doing anything on it, was my understanding that he would then start ticketing them and being more enforcement, because that's kind of that medium. It's like we could just ticket all the time, every time, or you can give the warning
My
and see what
understanding,
progress.
Peter, with the tickets is, from Tracy, we haven't issued tickets for that, for any of that stuff, from what she had told us from the last time I talked with her.
Maybe we need to start.
Did he say something about giving out coupons so they could go to or take their stuff to the dump and
Yeah.
that kind of stuff? He tries that approach with a dumpster first type of thing,
Yeah, he does.
so
Michaela, can
I
you,
think that's kind of giving them a,
yeah, have you seen with your tracking, like how things are going? Can you kind of give us an idea of?
I don't have an exact number in front of me, but I do know that in the last few months, some of the properties that we have sent certified notices to that have not made progress have been abated or are in the process of being abated. So we make multiple attempts to contact the property owner and the renter if applicable. And if there's still no improvement after we've tried to make contact several times, then we'll just go straight into abatement, which ultimately they would have to pay for that cost plus a 25% administrative fee. And if it is not paid, it does go on the taxes.
so is most of the problems, Michaela, been rentals?
Honestly, I would say it's probably been about 50-50 almost.
Okay.
When we did our windshield, walking around, That's what we found. About 50% was renters, that the rental properties were the problem, so. So what Michaela said is about right.
Because it seems like a lot of those, they just move in, it looks nice for a week or two, and then all of a sudden it's back to right where it was before, There's one on Eastern Avenue like that.
In my ride-arounds in the morning, that's exactly what happens. Jay will get a hold of them, take care of it, and it'll get cleaned up, and it's right back that way the next 3-4 weeks, so. They just have no pride in what they're doing, so.
Do we have any way to track where our approaches are successful or not successful?
As far as like sustained improvement, is that what you're looking for? To measure how long a property is maintained at our standards after they've been noticed?
Something like that. Yeah, we've recognized that there's an issue. This approach seems to work, this approach doesn't seem to work, or success rates, or anything to help inform a strategy moving forward.
It's definitely something that I can discuss with the police department. I have a monthly meeting with them where we go through what's happened in the last month and what we need to work on so that code enforcement is as efficient as it can be. So that's certainly something we could discuss at our next meeting.
Okay, thank you.
The other thing I'd like to throw out there is, I know that's important to keep our city looking nice and keep track of all that, but my personal opinion is we can't make that the police's priority. There's a lot of safety stuff within the city that needs to come before that.
It's interesting you bring that up. There is, I think in the Ordinance Enforcement Board, and I'm not sure how active they are. Familiar with that?
I am not. What chapter are you in for the Ordinance Enforcement Board?
I'd have to look it up again.
Okay. Yeah. I'm not aware of there being an ordinance for enforcement board at all.
Is it maybe the fact that the payments are made to the city and we don't send it through the district court, I think might be the section.
There's a
where we get-
municipal civil infractions.
Yeah, we had
Office.
a bureau of.
Bureau.
Which is-
Civil Infractions Bureau.
Which is here.
It will be here now.
Moving from this
Yeah.
police to city hall.
Yeah, so we're setting up what I would call a framework to make it more streamlined to issue civil infractions and then for us to collect civil infractions. So that would hopefully satisfy one of the concerns, which is, the ticketing process. But I would just, reiterate what Councilmember Andrus said. Our goal, our mindset, right or wrong right now, is compliance over punishment and multiple opportunities for compliance. And if council wants to change that practice, then it has to be a direction from the council. And I mean council, council. But that has been the practice, that was the practice that existed when I arrived, when I was informed by, staff back in 2017, how they approached ordinance enforcement. And I just assumed that was, this community's direction they wanted to keep going. If you want to go a different direction, instruct us and we will pivot.
Yeah, I think it was the Municipal Ordinance Violations Bureau that I was looking at that I thought, oh, that's really interesting, and certainly it involves the police, but I was wondering if there's more stakeholders. I know at one point we had a city planner and a ordinance enforcement vehicle and things like that.
We had a court enforcement officer with that vehicle, and that didn't work out.
But relieving some of the pressure off of the police directly doing that work, I think it's, I could see that.
I've had this conversation with Jay, and if there's pressure, it's not being shared with me. He actually enjoys this aspect. He is what I would call a very active police chief. You know, he drives around in a police vehicle. He performs traffic stops. He has the earbud in his ear the whole time, unlike my previous, police chief we had here. He responds to calls. Just this morning during our department head meeting, he goes, yep, it's, grass mowing season, and I'm going to be out there looking out and about. He is pushing us hard to restart the rental inspection program, which is going to require us to contract with a third-party firm to address some of the rental properties. Because through a rental inspection program, if they're not up to code, you get to, placard the property, which then says this property is not habitable for human occupation, which then turns into, as I told Jay, then it becomes a really hard step of us showing up at the house and escorting families out of their structure. And that's going to be, do we get, how comfortable are we at that level? The good part about that is educating the tenants that they get to withhold rent and put it into an escrow account because the landlord is not maintaining the property at a certain level. And so therefore the landlord doesn't receive their monthly rent. Again, lots of education and lots of, hard decisions to be made at that, something I don't think anybody gets excited about. But I'm not getting from Jay or Josh any kind of concern about, having to do code enforcement. They're constantly talking to us about see-click-fix. They're constantly in communication with, Michaela on sending out this letter. Michaela, reminds them when the 10-day notice is up, if it's a 10-day notice. And then, Jay is like, okay, now we're going to start the, abatement process since they haven't moved forward.
I know we just started this kind of new process with Michaela's involvement. I guess I would like to see if that makes any difference in some of the improvements. But then we always have that option to direct staff to make changes if we so see fit.
I go by 2 or 3 every single day of my life going home, and they are no improvement whatsoever. In fact, one's worse. So I don't see how this program is working.
What's it been, about a month, Michaela, that you've been tracking, or has it been longer? That time flies, but has it been longer than that?
It has been longer. I've been working almost since the beginning of the year.
wow.
Primarily, I enter things into see-click-fix, and I send out the certified mail when we send out notices.
Do they go to the home or to the homeowner?
So they go to both. If it's a rental, the tenant will get a notice, and so will the property owner.
Both are certified?
Correct.
Then what happens after that letter?
So they still have the 10 days. Usually, most everything is 10 days. We do give a little bit of leeway just to allow for mail time.
Right.
And we make sure that the compliance date doesn't fall on a weekend because we're not going to necessarily check up on a house during the weekend. And if there's been no improvement, generally I keep track of when a property's compliance date has come and passed and everything, and then I ask Jay or Josh to go out there to check on it, to send me a picture of what's going on, whether that means that they have taken care of the issues that were present or whether the issues are still there. And then from there, I think they try to contact the homeowner or renter or whoever, both if it's applicable, and ask whether they have plans to clean this up, or in the case of blight, and if no improvement is made, no contact is possible, then we just go into the abatement process, which ultimately, more times than not, ends up being more expensive by a long shot over what our municipal civil infraction tickets would be.
And just listening to that process, I was wondering at what point would you issue a citation, or 3? Like, would that be before a 10-day notice, or?
I would think that would be the next step after the 10-day notice, they didn't take care of it. you
I
issue
just
a
don't know, like,
citation.
that process for when that would even come into effect, or if it's even something in that kind of a situation that we do citations for, or what about like the grass mowing? We just eventually go out and mow the grass.
Typically, from what I've noticed, our process is not to issue a ticket. We just go straight from the noticing into abatement.
Again, following our, our framework of, compliance, not punishment. And what Michaela said there is very true. The abatement, much more expensive than even a third violation of a $300 ticket. The abatements can run anywhere from, several hundred to several $1,000s to clean up, a yard full of junk. If you're looking, I understand, there are certain houses in this city that are, according to people's standards, beyond disrepair. Not just, long grass or an unkept garden bed, but, no paint on the wall, a porch that might be, off its foundation. We do have a dangerous structure section in our ordinance where we can issue an order that this house is a dangerous structure. We then will get a court order to order the property owner to fix the structure or authorize the city to fix the structure, to which if the person doesn't fix the structure, like after, let's just say it's a 30-day notice by the courts, we could go in and fix the structure. So if it's, $47,000 to fix the structure, the city has to pay $47,000. Then it's a lien on that property. And it just sits there as a lien until they sell the property. Looking over our needs in this community from a city perspective, and this is something that, Mike and Delora, you were at the last ordinance meeting, and we spent some time talking about this with Nick. I'm not gonna say addresses on, but there's a property, in our city that it's unfortunate how dilapidated it is, and it is occupied by a family. That property would cost the city probably north of $200,000 in rehab costs to rehab it, probably $25,000 to order a demo. But then, demoing that structure is, probably costs we would never recuperate. Because when it goes to a tax foreclosure, after 3 years of, the property owner not paying the taxes, the county will sell it at auction, and it will go for a lot less than what we paid to demo it. This is what we experienced over on 5th Street in Kalamazoo, where we demoed, a house. And then we demoed one also over in the Russell Robinson neighborhood when I first got here. That's just money we don't recoup, which is fine if the city wants to make a decision to go that route, but then we're gonna have to reprioritize the different needs of our budgets, because that money just isn't available right now, unless we dig deep into our fund balance and just put off on, capital improvement projects, which, are also necessary.
So the purpose of the way we've done things with going straight into abatement is just to get it done, rather than trying to get the homeowner to comply
Yeah.
and do it themselves.
Yeah, and I would say we've been successful in abating several properties, cleaning up properties. It's disheartening when 30 days later, That yard looks the same as it did before we did the abatement. The things just reappeared on the front porches and in the front yard and along the garage, and how things, just keep reappearing. There's a deeper issue that I don't know if local government can solve when it gets to that.
Yeah, and so then what's our next recourse?
We issue another notice that you're in violation of our blight junk ordinance, and you have to clean it up again. And you don't clean it up, and we abate it. And we continue to put those abatement costs on their taxes. And their tax bill, instead of being, $1,000, is now
3,000.
3,000 or 1,700, I was gonna go, but Roger, we're with the thousands of dollars, not the hundreds of dollars. Yeah,
Yeah,
And they pay them?
they pay their taxes, because their taxes are usually escrowed in their mortgages if it's owner occupied. And when it's escrowed, they just pay a higher, monthly mortgage rate. And, I mean, I'm not trying to be callous about this, I'm not trying to be, jovial, but I mean, this is just not, this is the worst part of one's
yeah,
job when serving the public. It's also horrible if you have to be a resident, a neighbor that lives next to it, and you're working really hard to keep your property up.
yeah.
There's a stretch of properties that, behind our industrial park on the south side that Michaela and I drove by last week, and I go, you just have to elevate this, Michaela. And you need to work with Jay and Josh, and we need to figure out a plan, because it's getting worse. There's one property with a lot of Sea-Doos and snowmobiles, mostly snowmobiles, right? Lots of snowmobiles,
Green Street.
Both.
and it's,
Yeah.
I would not want, personally, and
Actually,
I have
it
low
looks- It
standards.
looks good right now,
Yeah,
to be honest with you.
I have low standards. I would not want to, have to be in that neighborhood.
You're right.
And so, I don't want to sound like I'm turning a deaf ear to this council. And so if you want to roll up the sleeves and have a conversation, we can bring Jay and Josh Morgan into this building, because they really are two police officers that get into this. Michaela has worked on a code enforcement manual, per se, that we're looking to present to you later on this spring or early summer now, because we're getting into summer now. We just want to get through the budget process before we put it onto a study session. I didn't realize that Griswold was going to go that quick, or we might have presented it tonight, but this is something we can really have a conversation about. And I want you to really, spend some time and thought on this, because it is it's a gut check kind of, discussion. I mean, I've been through several of these where we've gone to court in both my previous job, and then even here, we took a property in the Mill District. Then I found that's about $200,000 to demo that building. I'm like, there's no way I can come to city council with a purchase order of $200,000 to demo a building that is standing, not occupied, and unfortunately, it's an eyesore for a neighbor. It doesn't meet our code, but there's so much more we'd spend $200,000 on that benefits the community
Yeah.
as a whole than that one property, so. But we're willing to engage in the conversation with council to talk, more about code enforcement. That was one of your goals you established for this upcoming year, so I assume over the course of the next 12 months, we're gonna be a lot more, I don't wanna use the words aggressive, but a lot more talkative about this issue.
Yeah, so we're adjusting the fines, the first, second, and third round of fines, but we're not really using our fines, so that doesn't necessarily matter, because nobody's getting those citations, they're just getting abated.
And that was gonna be my question, like, why do we even have citations
Yeah.
if it's nothing that we use? Like,
Those citations, that's just for, not only for blight, but for the other ones also. Like too many chickens in your yard.
I mean, I'll,
Don't start
I'll,
that
I'll,
again.
I'll remind council, if we pull over 9 vehicles for speeding,
Animals in your house.
right now, our rate is about 10% of traffic violators end up with a traffic citation. We're about at 10%, is if I recall correctly what Jay tells me.
But they get the first one through,
Those are the parking tickets.
oh,
I'm talking about pulling people over for
okay,
speeding,
okay.
unless it's egregious, and that's usually when it's the 10%. We don't give a ticket to everybody we pull over.
The 90% warning rate?
I believe so. I believe Jay shared that with you during your budget stuff too, when he did his budget presentation.
Yeah, because he said one time if he pulls grandma over going to church because she's speeding, she's not gonna get a ticket for the first time.
That could have been an
He
example.
made that comment
Yeah.
as an example
The
one
sheriff's
time.
deputies do not have the same understanding.
It'll make it expensive to ride your bicycle on the sidewalk downtown, because that's one of our ordinances,
Oh my gosh. How many kids have I told to get off the sidewalk? Like an old man.
and skateboards. Both not allowed on sidewalks.
You'd make a mint on the number of people going the wrong way on Good Street
Yeah.
from Good Shepherd Church to Cedar.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Every Sunday, there's a white Subaru that leaves the church across from my house that pulls the wrong way on the Cutler. It's the same white Subaru every Sunday. I'm like, I just need to put a sign that says one way in my driveway, pointing that way. Maybe it will correct one time.
Happened at the Catholic Church too. though.
Nice. No one's immune. We'll go ahead and we'll put code enforcement on the May 22nd study session for a further discussion, if that's how council would like to proceed with this. I'll have Jay, I'll have Josh, and Michaela will be here for that conversation, and we'll be able to have a very pointed conversation about this. And if there's anything you'd like to know more between now and then about the code enforcement, feel free to just email us so we can be prepared for questions, and we can go that route.
So you guys worked on an ordinance for that, for code enforcement. We have not seen that yet, correct?
We had seen them, a lot of them in council, and then we kind of kicked it back so the ordinance group could look at them first and then make a final recommendation
Right.
after we had seen them.
So it would be kind of handy to see that
Well, this
before our
was,
meeting.
and this was just like several different ordinances. We haven't seen like the garbage ordinance or anything like that yet, which,
So you guys have seen, well, previous councils, I mean, the blight ordinance right now is in our code of ordinances already, chapter 16, correct? So yeah, chapter 16 already establishes what our blight is.
we didn't see that one yet. We're not to that one yet. We just saw 1 through 11. Because Nick is still
But I
working
thought
on
you
that.
guys had gone through all of them.
We did, but then it went back to Nick to redraft them.
So, for example.
He's making changes.
Yeah, so chapter 16, which is the blight, which is no junk in your yard, no used grills, old grills in your yard, no outdoor furniture in your yard. That is currently in our current ordinances that we enforce. That, was reviewed by the ordinance subcommittee. I don't think you made any changes to that ordinance at all. And then what Nick has recommended, working with Michaela, was to take chapter 16 and the long grass ordinance and put that in chapter 7, which is our building code ordinance. So now we have a property and a building and property maintenance code ordinance. So everything's in one chapter. So when we send out letters, we reference stuff, we're referencing one chapter. It's easily searchable and findable for residents and property owners.
Okay, and I guess that's what I was getting at, is if the committee had made a bunch of changes, how are we gonna be
Yeah,
eligible of what those
I
were
would
when
say
we
there
have
weren't
our
any
meeting?
changes to the blight, if I recall correctly.
So I guess you would just want to look at the current ordinances.
And that's what I
Yeah.
was
And
asking,
that's
if
the-
there
yeah,
was
they
a
give,
bunch of
like-
changes,
They give like the
we
red
wouldn't
line
know what to ask.
that comes through. So Nick does the red line, or no, Kayla did the red line version when we were having our meetings. And then that went to Nick, and then they've sat together, Joel, Michaela, and Nick, to craft it from what our recommendations were.
Yes,
And then
and
they
that's
come
what I was
back-
saying,
yeah.
if there was any changes, we wouldn't need to know those
Yeah, they
for our
come back.
meeting.
Yeah.
So, yes, okay.
Misunderstood. I thought you
Okay.
were saying that you hadn't seen that one yet, but no.
No, I know we haven't, that's what I was asking, if there was changes to be knowledgeable for our meeting, May 22nd, so. Okay.
When, are we gonna say, like, all of the ordinance we're bringing forward at once? I guess that's the next question. Are we,
That is the next question. It's my recommendation that we bring them in groups for approval. So I believe the ordinance subcommittee, we are through chapter 10, if I'm not mistaken.
Thought we went through 11, but
I think 11's garbage, isn't it? Okay, thank you. Yeah, so we're through 11, and we've deleted a couple chapters that aren't needed. For example, elections. You do not need an elections chapter. That can be covered through a resolution. So Nick is recommending to get rid of that section. So we'll be bringing those, there's some resolutions you have to do, like we have an emergency planning, chapter. However, we have never identified our emergency coordinator. I recommended that we identify the chief of police as the emergency coordinator, which needs to be done by resolution. So we plan to bring a handful to you at a time, so council isn't overwhelmed with adopting them all at once. But we're anticipating to be done with this process by the end of the summer, because the remaining ordinances are rather simple, except for the garbage one. That's gonna be a heavier lift.
Okay. Any further discussion on anything? And I'm not asking you, Delora, are we finished? See what kind of
it took
worms
up
you.
35 minutes.
I know. Bill, did you have something, Bill? I'd seen you with your mic, okay.
I was thinking, but that's, did you see the wheels turning?
No, I've seen the hands moving.
I was looking for a letter that I had, which actually was a federal government person talking about fines and what good they were. If they were too little, people just say, pfft, there was no consequence. And I was looking for that letter. That's what I was looking for. So I could share that with everyone, but I couldn't find it.
Right,
I
okay.
hate it when that happens.
Okay. Well, maybe you can find it and bring it May 22nd when we talk again about it.
There you go.
How's that? Okay.
May find it. I might.
By that time?
I don't know if I will or not, Mayor, but.
All right, if
Probably
nobody
on the
else
computer.
has anything else right now, we will adjourn at 6:37. Oh, no, we need to see, was the agenda okay for the regular meeting? Anybody have anything else on the agenda for the regular meeting? We're good.
I closed everything down.
Okay. So now we will adjourn the meeting at 6:38, and we will reconvene the regular meeting at 7 o'clock. It is 7 o'clock. I'd like to call your attention to the next regular meeting, please. First on the agenda is roll call. Michaela?
Sure. Councilmember Zeter,
Present.
Councilmember Hanse,
Present.
Councilmember Andrus,
Here.
Councilmember Redding,
Here.
Councilmember Morgan,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Burt,
Here.
and Mayor Galloway.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Okay, thank you, Michaela. At this time, could we all stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Next on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. 4A, approval of the regular council meeting agenda for May 8, 2023. Have any changes or anything? If we could get a motion, please.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Support?
It has been moved and supported. All in favor, please signal by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next on the agenda, number 5 is approval of minutes. 5A, approval of the study session minutes from April 24, 2023, council meeting. Do we have any changes or anything? Nothing? Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve the study session minutes from April 24th as presented.
Support.
It has been moved and supported. All in favor, please signal by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Abstained?
Next on the agenda, 5B, approval of the regular meeting minutes from April 24, 2023, council meeting. Nothing, no changes, nothing?
I'll make a motion to approve the regular meeting minutes from April 24th council meeting as is.
It has been moved and supported. All in favor, please signal by saying aye. All opposed, same sign.
Abstained?
Motion carries. Next on the agenda, 5C, approval of the special meeting minutes from May 1, 2023, council meeting. Anything on that?
I make a motion to approve.
Support?
It has been moved and supported. All in favor, please signal by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next on the agenda is number 7, first reading of the ordinances and scheduling of public hearing. 7A, adoption of Resolution 2311 to introduce Ordinance 510 to repeal Chapter 13, Historic Preservation of the City of Allegan Code of Ordinance for a first reading. Joel?
Sure. So this first reading is a little different than previous first readings for council, as we phrased it in the form of a resolution for council to consider. The reason we decided to go through with a resolution is to more or less highlight and restate the process that we've been through over the past few years in dealing with the Historic District Ordinance. So the way the resolution is formatted is, it identifies that the districts are established in 85, that the creation of the districts necessitated the formation of the Historic District Commission to oversee changes to structures within the districts. We then get into a discussion in the resolution where we identify a portion of the structures within the district have been altered to a point where the overall historical character of the districts have been diluted. We then identify that City Council has struggled to maintain full membership on the Allegan Historic District Commission. We then identify that City Council and the Historic District Commission recognizes the value of historic preservation. We identify that the Historic District Commission has spent over a year reviewing their processes and impact on the community, and that the Historic District Commission engaged members of the community during 2 public open houses. and that the HDC compiled and presented a recommendation to City Council in November 2022, which called for the removal of the strict guidelines of the HDC. And then whereas after a joint discussion with the City Council, the City Attorney, and the State Historic Preservation Office, the District Commission revised the recommendation in February 23, which called for the dissolution of the Historic District Commission. And that the City Attorney has advised that the City Council has the power to repeal ordinances. And then it be resolved that City Council introduces for a first reading Ordinance 510 to repeal Chapter 13 of the City Code of Ordinances and schedule a public hearing and second reading of Ordinance 510 for May 22nd. And then further be resolved that City Council encourages community members who support maintaining the city's existing Historic District Commission or who would support the restructuring of the current historic districts, perhaps covering less area within the city, to provide their feedback to the City Council during or prior to the public hearing on May 22nd. One thing I do want to highlight, and it was in the report and an attachment was there, that there are two ways that historic district ordinance can be removed from the books. One is following the standards set forth in PA 169, or you can just repeal the ordinance. That's been identified by SHPO as an appropriate process to repeal the ordinance. So that's where we are here. That's how we got here this evening. I don't want to rehash the whole process that the HDC and council and the community has gone through over the past couple years. Staff is here to answer any questions. This is a first reading, and then adopting this resolution moves it to a second reading on May, and I just forgot the date already. Thank you very much. Moves it to May 22nd for a second reading and a public hearing on May 22nd.
Okay. Do you want to have any discussion on that?
One thing I'd like to bring to the discussion is that we've got our own ordinance that says we should have a study to, if we want to remove historic districts. And I just want to point out that we've got that now. I mean, if we set aside PA 169, it's still there. And I think it's important that we show good faith in following our own ordinance, not just worry about the state law. So I think we've got a study that gives us options. I think coming back to that point of agreement that we had during the joint session where we voted to accept that report with the three options, I think that's important to emphasize that we've got the study showing that we've got that as a viable option. Because that was one of the options that HDC offered at that time, was to just end the HDC, repeal the ordinance.
So, and I know, we've had this conversation, but I feel like the last word we got from that committee and from the HDC was, we recommend dissolution. And so where do we?
That letter actually gave us the option conservation district or dissolution. And I mean, we could add the conservation district as a fourth option, but I don't see that as a well-developed option. I'm not sure what that would gain us.
The conservation district?
Correct. And I mean, that letter was written after we voted as a council on the document that was given to us. So I don't see how we've got agreement on something that came after we voted.
Yeah. I just always go back to that, regardless of where it fell, that the people doing it were like, we should just stop. We should not do this anymore.
And I appreciated Councilmember Zeter adding some context to that. We had asked him the question, what was the discussion like when that letter was written? And I want to be careful, I'm paraphrasing Mike, paraphrasing Eddie here, but If the feeling was that council's not supportive, I kind of understand where they're coming from at that point. And I want to be careful too, not to leave this as though it was a decision that the chair of the HDC made, because it's not his decision. And again, I understand if that truly was his position that council doesn't want to see it, I understand that, because they've really not been set up for success during this process. They were given no budget, they were given no staff time. I mean, PCI was told not to come to the meetings midway through the study. There was that first attorney's letter that was written during the study. There was the letter from SHPO that the CLG representative came and apologized for. It was just very disruptive during the process. And then again, in the meeting itself, the joint meeting with the HDC, I was under the impression that we were voting to accept the recommendation, and that really requires an investment on the part of the city to reform this HDC, and I just don't see that happening. So I think if we're looking at the letter as a communication that there was a feeling that the city wasn't going to support the HDC and therefore the HDC needed to end, I understand that, but it still isn't his decision, and it still isn't the agreement point that the council last was. And the letter gives us the option. It says, we recommend either getting rid of the whole thing or switching to a conservation district. And we can consider the conservation district as a fourth option, but I keep coming back. Every time I look at that study again, I go, yeah, that recommendation could work if council's ready to make that investment. And I think that's really the decision for council. I feel like we need to take responsibility for it and not allow it to be like, oh, Eddie wrote that letter, and so Eddie decided to end it. That's unfair to Eddie, because he's just the last chair that was in that spot. It's like he lost the musical chairs game, and now he's the guy who's there when we're ready to end it. But ultimately, it's the city's decision whether we're gonna give them a budget, whether we're gonna provide them with adequate staff, an architect, somebody who can help them through defining what's historic and what's not historic. I mean, I'm understanding of the reasons that council members wouldn't want to make that investment. And I want to, again, offer that the study is there as a mechanism for us to show good faith to our ordinance. Yeah, we're supposed to do a study. We did the study. The study has given us information where we've decided we can't make that investment. I can support that as a council member. I would not vote in favor of it because I see the value of the recommendation and I see a better path forward there. But if the majority came to that conclusion that, yes, we've studied it, we have the study, we're not going to make that investment, once that vote's in place, I can stand as a council member behind that, if we go that route.
And I felt like the recommendation, the final recommendation from the study was something that wasn't going to be possible per SHPO. And then to then do the demolition ordinance only, that wasn't defensible by the attorney.
Correct.
So their recommendation in the end, they had 3, but their final recommendation was to have only things that came forward to the Historic District Commission that needed to have a building permit from PCI. And then SHPO said that that was not something that was possible.
Wait, no, the CLG representative apologized for that letter. He said it was premature.
But that was the recommendation, and he was saying that that recommendation would not maintain our historic district status. So whether it was a premature
The letter,
response, it was still in response to the recommendation that he received, which was their final recommendation. I guess I feel from sitting here with them and having this conversation for years now, and it's not just this last time that was the recommendation. This is the second time that the HDC themselves have said that they would prefer to be dissolved, or they're asking council what that would look like.
Two separate HDCs.
2 separate times.
some of those
I'm not
things
done
are.
speaking. So when they were here, they were basically saying they didn't want to do the work. They didn't have the energy to do the work. And as I have mentioned, if they're not going to do the work, who will do the work? we have a hard time filling the seats. I don't have the energy or the time to do the work. And per our ordinance, you're right, Dave, we would appoint as a council a study group that would go through each property to see whether it was contributing or not, and then we could reduce the size of the districts. But who would do that? Who would have that task to take on? I do not feel that our Historic District Commission now has that energy. I mean, they basically said they did not. So I am not saying that I do not want a Historic District Commission. I feel, and I have said it multiple times, in my mind, it's a lot easier to start from scratch in this situation rather than trying to pick apart this overly expansive, group of homes that we have. Because you'd have to go through every one of them by ordinance to be able to make those decisions, and I don't know who would do that.
It's my belief that the HDC is a needed subcommittee. Like the economic development, if we're not gonna use it right now, why don't we just put it on the shelf? Why dissolve it? Because it's harder to breathe back into life a change from nothing than it is to find the flaws and what makes the flaws and adapt them.
I don't think we could
I don't think we
table.
can. I think to maintain our HDC, we have to enforce it. If we're not enforcing it, I think they'll.
So we had a closed session where we received a document. In order to talk about that document, we need to waive our attorney-client privilege. Is that something council would consider? Because it's relevant to this conversation, especially some misinformation I just heard.
And I'll be honest, like, at this point, we are here to set a public hearing for this, to adopt the resolution and to set a public hearing. This is the time for questions of staff, and then, after we have a motion on the floor is when we discuss. And then there will be a public hearing next month, and that's when we actually make the decision. It was a majority of council's direction to staff to come up with this, and this is where we're at now. So I will make a motion to adopt Resolution 2311 to introduce Ordinance 510 and to set the public hearing on May 22nd.
Second.
It has been moved and supported. All in favor, please signal by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign.
Oppose?
Opposed?
Michaela, did you get that 4-3? Motion carries, or motion passes. Next, we have public comment, which there's no public in attendance. Next on the agenda, excuse me, is number 11, 11A, City Boards, Commissions, and Area Agencies. 11A1, Airport Advisory Board from May 1st meeting. Peter, please.
Let me see. I wasn't there, so. I was here. Well, I can read it. I went over it before. We did an airport tree update, the drone results on the turf runway. The issue on the turf runway is that the trees across the street in the credit union are too tall for us to have a turf runway that would meet the minimum lengths that are required. So I believe have moved to support to notify the city council that the board advises to close the turf runway due to compliance issues. Part of that also comes into, in order for us to be fully licensed, we can't have that turf runway out of compliance. And then that also affects the state and federal funding that we can use. So we tried to, we did the new survey with a drone, and there's still trees that are above the height on the credit union's property. There's been some surveys done of the people that use the airport, the people in the hangars. there's quite a few that like the use of it, but they can understand that needs to be closed in order for us to be able to move forward with other projects. The Allegan Credit Union is gonna be doing their, block party on May 13th. We'll be sending out a NOTAM, which just tells the airmen that there'll be the block party there, mostly because of the grass runway right there. And hangar leases, I believe they're all full again, even with Andy, our current board president. He's left his hangar because he was moving out of the area. He was gonna finish up his term though before, he's given us notice when he's gonna be leaving is at the end of this term for him. And then not a whole lot else other than that, a little bit of talk about deer and fencing and other projects, but that's kind of what's been in discussion for a while out there.
Okay, thank you, Peter. Next on the agenda is 11B, the Finance Department. 11B1, request to approve accounts payable and payroll. Roger, please.
Yes, we have accounts payable in the amount of $624.94, and payroll in the amount of $121,180.67 for a total disbursement of $780,805.61. I make a motion to approve.
Support.
It has been moved and supported. All in favor, please signal by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next on the agenda is 11B2, public hearing for fiscal year 2024 budget. Joel or Tracy?
I'll go ahead and introduce this item. This
Okay.
evening, council will be holding a public hearing on our fiscal year 2024 budget. On the screen behind you is a summary of our funds showing our revenues, the fund balance transfers, and then our total expenditures. We are looking at approximately a $17.5 million budget for this upcoming year. Over the past several months, you've been part of a handful of meetings with staff. Staff has had quite a few more meetings as we have assembled this budget. The public hearing was noticed in the paper per our charter, and a draft budget is attached to your packet as well. Certain things I want to highlight for council, just to remind you. We are keeping the millage rate the same, and then the water rates will be going up 3.5%, 3%. The water rates will be going up 3%, and the sewer rates at your request is going to go up 1.5%. And those are in the budget. And tonight is just a public hearing. You'll be having you'll be adopting this at your second meeting in May, or the last meeting in May per the charter.
At one point, we talked about having a document with some talking points around the rate increases. Did we get that?
So that was a document we talked about creating prior to the last meeting when council gave the direction to go, or the last budget review, and council gave the direction to but to raise it to 1.5% for sewer. We can create something that establishes the resolution that was passed, I believe it was in 17, that talked about 1.5% over the next, foreseeable future. That document stretched out to 2023, I believe it was. And then last year, there was not a water rate increase of 1.5. Therefore, if you look at the 3% for this year, that's what we talked about creating. So that is something we can still get in council's hands if that's something council would like to have.
Is that what you're referring to, Dave, is like the communication about the 3% increase in water?
Yeah, we talked about
Yeah,
that.
I would still like that personally, if that's something that could go out with water bills or something, just as an explanation.
I would too.
And then,
We can work on something this week and email it to you for just your review.
was there any follow-up on how we ended up at such low fund balances for water and sewer?
I think we covered the expenditures over the past couple years at the last meeting. Specifically, what are you asking?
Like, if we were to go to, it's page 94 in the packet, page 50 in the budget. I think the increases that I was seeing that I was curious about was the capital has ended up at 15.8 million. And that, I think what we saw earlier for Streetscape was like, that's like 8.6 something or something like that. So what's the extra from that capital investment? And then the other one that stood out to me was the operational expenses. From 2 years ago, it was like 4.6 million, and this last year, or the current year, it's up to 8.4, and it looks like we sustained there. And so those are the two areas I need a little more explanation on. And it's page 50 of the budget, but 94 of 394 for the packet.
Yeah, well, the question was about the fund balances, so I'm looking for the fund balance graph, showing the history of our fund balances.
Well, I assume the fund balances are going down just because expenses have gone up. So I was looking for just where are those expenses going?
They're gonna be in each individual line item. There's not exactly just one great big thing that I can point out. That would be one of those things where I could bore you all to death and go and explain, you know, the swings and all those things, but I have so many different spreadsheets that would explain all of those different things that it's not just a quick answer, like, it's not just, I mean, obviously with it being operations, it doesn't include the, downtown streetscape or anything like that. It's just the cost of everything going up. So I can't give exact explanations without going through each line item with you. But I mean, I can do that if you guys want me to.
So the operational expenses just organically have like doubled over the last 2 years.
Well, I think we've added some things too. We've added contracting for cleaning, which it becomes an operational expense that we've increased. For VC3, for our IT services, you know, we're getting better. We're paying for more because we've asked for more things from some of those line items. So, you know, instead of just calling in IT when we need it, we have support 24/7, you know, that can remote in. There's situations like that. I'm trying to think of other big things off the top of my head, but I didn't literally have to go through.
I mean, I'm thinking from a ratepayer's perspective, you know, if capital has gone up so much and operational expenses have gone up so much, and we're asking them to pay more, and we can't explain what those expenses are, I'm worried that people are gonna see it as, well, are you just gonna keep coming back for more money? That's what I'm looking at it going, if we don't understand why these things are increasing so much, how do we know it's not gonna just?
And it's literally, you know, all the individual budgets. I mean, you look at just water and sewer alone, I mean, the, electrical expenses are going up hundreds of thousands of dollars from last year to this year. I don't know that they're actually gonna go up to that, but that's what consumers had indicated to Doug, so that's what we increased the budget line item by. Everything else has gone up by 3 to 10% as well. So it's, you know, if you look at all the pages, like, you know, for instance, I mean, just talking about water and sewer, go to pages 106 through 111. I mean, you can look and see from each fiscal year the biggest differences. The other thing is we've added in a transfer over to the motor vehicle pool fund for the enterprise, vehicles that we lease. You know, those are additional expenses that we didn't have in prior years. I'm just trying to see what else sticks out to me, but, I mean, water and sewer both have gone up significantly in the past year, expense-wise, just operational expenses.
So Tracy, is this something, and maybe Dave, I don't know if this would help you, is this something maybe you could go through and just pick maybe the high, I know it's
Yeah, I
probably a
can.
lot of little things,
I can definitely
and
do
maybe
that.
just email that to Dave?
Yep. Yep. One thing too, that's an addition that I can think of off the top of my head is the bonding that wasn't in there the year before, that's gonna be in there, you know, this year and the following years to make up for the downtown streetscape. So those are significant amounts, you know, if you look at just the, bond payments for, water, last year, 2021 was 134,000. Last year was 127. This year is supposed to be 600,000, and next year 700,000. So those are making up the big difference in operational expenses, because those become operational expenses. So I will make that list, just so you guys can see the things that are swinging, you know, more than the 3 to 5%. And then I can email that to everybody or bring it back. I don't know how you guys prefer it, but I can bring it back to the council meeting so it's public, or just email it to you guys for your information, whatever.
I'm fine with it just being emailed,
Okay.
Tracy, and then we can look at it and ask
Yep.
you any questions ahead of time.
Absolutely.
If it's,
But it is all in this book. Everything that adds up to that page 50, if you add up all of these individual budgets that look like this, those are the big swings.
And is that for operational and capital? Will we get an explanation for the capital too?
Yeah, I can do that as well. Yeah, the operational part, I'll do the two separate lists, one for operational, one for capital.
Yeah, that would help. It'd be good to see too, what's actually budgeted for expense for the streetscape. Because I'm thinking ahead to, we'd been hearing, well, we can't do any more budget adjustments. We've hit that point next year, no more budget adjustments. But
So that's more,
That's not true.
it's not true. We can do budget adjustments
This
all
budget
day
has a
long.
$2.5 million fund balance. So we have $2.5 million that's unaccounted for. What we don't want to do is do any budget adjustments to dig into that 2.5 million until we are done with this streetscape
Right.
project. Because something might come up that's beneath the dirt that we are not aware of right now. So we have to be cautious moving forward.
And the other comment I believe I made is when you guys have new things brought to you, just be conscious of where it puts us. You know, we haven't done that. We haven't discovered, hopefully, nothing under the roads, but we haven't discovered anything. Hopefully, we don't. But if we do, and then you've already approved, you know, 5 other things for Doug that require budget adjustments, that all affects those numbers. So it's not that we can't do budget adjustments, because we do them all the time. It's just, we need to look at every single thing and how it's gonna affect which fund needs the budget adjustment. So, yeah.
is there a point where it would really be too much budget adjustment? Like, is it okay to do a couple $100K or?
Yeah, you can make council can make a budget adjustment for whatever they want, as long as it doesn't put us in a deficit.
So when I showed up here in 2017, I was informed that the council at that time had an unwritten rule, and I've mentioned this multiple times, that they would like to keep the fund balance north of $1 million or 20%. And I believe at the end of this projected year, we have our fund balance for our general fund at 39.7%, as you can see on page 42 of the budget document. So,
And if you look at where we're at for third quarter with the third quarter budget adjustment, it also has, I can find that sheet. Yeah, so for projecting for the end of this year, we're gonna be at 46. So we're still, yeah, we can make budget adjustments for whatever we have the money to make budget adjustments for.
Well, and my question about how much have we budgeted for Streetscape kind of comes back to that, okay, so we're anticipating a 20% contingency. Is that already in expenses, or like if we added $1.5 million to the Streetscape budget? would
We've
we-
already accounted for that, so that 20% contingency is already a line item in this budget that, not the 2020, not this budget, but the one we're currently in. All that money is in there. We have the $9 million budgeted for this fiscal year, which will transfer over to next year or the year after, or however many years it takes.
But the funding plan said it was an $11 million, right, like $9 million is where we're at now, but if we added 20%, we'd be at 11 million.
No, so
Or am I
we
reading
have,
that?
we had, I think Millbachers was 6 million, plus we had 1 million in other items, and then we had another million or so that was the 20% contingency. So it totals about 9 million, I believe, right, Joel?
yeah, this is stuff we hashed out at the last meeting. I'm hopping into the project file right now on the S drive, Tracy. Give me 1 sec.
So if we budgeted 9 million and that includes the 20%
Yep.
contingency, that's fine. I was looking at the financing plan and it looked like 11 million was where we landed
Yep, not
contingency.
sure about the 11, but,
Yeah, so what you're referencing, Dave, one moment, and it's what we shared at the last meeting, is our total revenue sources coming in is just north of 11 million. 3.4 million in grants, outside money, 4.6 million in bonding, and 2.9 in general fund balance cash on hand. This is, that's the number you're recommending. And what Tracy is telling you to the whole council, and what we discussed at the last meeting, was this money has already been reserved, set aside in the budget process.
does that make sense?
Yeah, we've
Yep.
assigned 9 million for costs for Streetscape.
And that 9 million, that 9.6 we're at, that includes that 20% contingency. 6.9 for Millbacher. I don't have the subtotal here for design, construction, engineering, but over the course of the project, it was just under $1 million for that, and then 1.3 in contingency to get to 9.6.
Okay, so at this time, I would like to open the public hearing. 7:38, I'm going to open the public hearing. 7:38, I'm going to close the public hearing. Next on the agenda, excuse me, 11B3 is request to adopt Resolution 23.12, approving the third quarter budget adjustments. Tracy, you gonna take this, or?
Yeah, I can do that. These are, again, adjustments that have come through from, January through March of this year. And for that quarter, I'm just asking that you guys approve, the resolution so that, we can keep going forward with the budgets and expenditures as you guys had already set forth. So, at the end of this quarter, with all these amendments, we'd be at $3.3 million fund balance for general fund. And that's the 46% fund balance. If you guys have any questions on the specific adjustments that I made, you can ask but everything that is on here, I believe, was brought to council by either Doug or
Jay?
Jay.
Any questions on anything on the budget? Could we get,
Make a motion to approve the third quarter budget adjustments.
I'll support.
it has been moved and supported. All in favor, please signal by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next on the agenda is 11E, Public Works. 11E1, request to adopt Resolution 23.13, authorizing a contract with MDOT to obtain reimbursement through ARPA funding for operations at Padgham Field Airport. Joel?
All right, thank you, Mayor. Recently, city staff was informed by MDOT Aero, that's the Michigan Department of Transportation Aero Department, that the city is eligible for an additional $32,000 in ARPA funding to reimburse us for operation costs, so fuel, maintenance, et cetera, staffing costs typically. So Doug Codsman, I apologize, went through, time cards and, verified that we do have $32,000 in labor that we've spent out there this year. And when you adopt this resolution, we will send it off to MDOT, and the part of this resolution is authorizing Doug as the signatory on all contract and the certifications. He'll sign these, and then MDOT will give us an additional $32,000 that we were not planning. And part of this stuff is, you'll see this in an upcoming budget adjustment, because we weren't planning on that revenue, so Tracy's gonna have to identify this as a budget adjustment, so that'll probably be in your fourth quarter budget adjustments that, happen in the fall. Any questions about this?
No, we're fine with revenue budget adjustment.
Sounds good to me.
I move we adopt Resolution 23.13.
Support.
It has been moved and supported. All in favor, please signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next on the agenda is 11E2, request to authorize a purchase order for SME for additional work on a leaking underground storage tank and budget transfer in the amount of $5,250. Joel?
Thank you, Mayor. Speaking about budget adjustments, this is a budget adjustment where we will be asking you to adjust our expenditures. So 300 Monroe Street is home to the Allegan District Fire Hall. The city still oversees that property from an ownership perspective. In the late 90s, there was a confirmed leak from the underground storage tank there. It appeared that it's been leaking for some time, and the city at that time went through the process, submitted a report to Eagle with a corrective action plan that was submitted in 1998. Completed closure report was received by Eagle 10 years later, essentially saying that the cities did what we needed to do. Eagle denied that report at that time. They said you didn't do a good enough job. However, at that time, the city council said, we've done what we needed to do, we're okay with it. And then about a month ago, I got a letter from Eagle saying, hey, we're going through our old records, you need to finalize this project. So 15 years later, after denying us, Eagle sent us a letter saying, we're not done talking about this issue. So we have to correct this issue with Eagle. So we reached out to SME. They were the original firm at the time. So they have the corporate knowledge, the historical knowledge on this. And for $5,250, they can do the historical document review that needs to be done, do a site inspection, a map update, and then hopping on a phone call with us and Eagle to figure out what the city actually has to do next. I will let you know, it's my gut feeling that addressing this issue is going to be more than the $5,250. Right now is just bringing everybody up to speed. And since this is north of my spending authority without going to council. I can only spend up to 5,000. And since it's also a non-documented expense, we weren't planning on it, we can't find a line item to connect it to. I had to bring it to council for that reason as well, to have you approve this purchase order with SME to do the historical document review, the site inspection, and updating our map for this area, and then consult with us at Eagle on what the next steps need to be for us. But we can't just ignore this issue from Eagle like we did in 2008. Questions?
I have a question. So is this a tank, because I don't understand all this stuff, is this a tank that we have to keep underground? It's a, what is the,
So I'm not an expert in this. This is another reason why we need to bring SME to the table with us. But from my limited knowledge, when we have a leaking underground storage tank, we're responsible for it. And we can either, I have been informed there's possibilities where we could fill it in with sand and just, then you could keep it there, or you can remediate it by pulling it out, which is also, a cost. And that's what us working with Eagle and SME will come to a resolution on what we need to do here.
okay, so
Yeah.
it's a storage tank of what? Is it an empty tank?
It could have been, it could have been, it could be empty right now. It could have been a fuel tank. I mean, I just don't know that answer.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. All
There's a
right.
lot of could have beens.
Okay, all right, okay. And that was my question, can we just remove it and be done, or,
Yeah.
I know it wasn't that
But
easy, but,
removing it as that little diagram on the screen that Michaela found on the internet. It's not just a tank, but it's what might have leaked out from it, the plume that might be there. A concern that you may have in this area, or one may have in this area, is the closeness of the Kalamazoo River just to the north of this. And it's, direction of the groundwater flow in this area. It may go that way, so. But again, this isn't something we can just, hope Eagle waits another 15 years to send us a letter and say, do something. I feel this is important that we, wrap this up and put this issue behind us.
okay, thank you, Joel. So,
So, fire department, so 300 Monroe Street.
so could we get a motion to authorize a purchase order?
I'll make a motion to authorize this purchase order for SME for $5,250.
I'll support.
It has been moved and supported. All in favor, please signal by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next on the agenda, 11F, City Manager and City Clerk. 11F1, Request to adopt Resolution 2314 regarding the relocation of certain Allegan County functions from the County Courthouse to the County Services Building. Joel, you gonna take this?
Yeah, I'll take this one. At your previous meeting, we discussed passing a resolution that, that regards the relocation of the certain Allegan County functions from the county courthouse to the county service building out in Allegan Township. During that review of the proposed resolution at that time, I believe there was one change that was recommended to be, instituted into this resolution, and that has to deal with that, I think it's the fourth or fifth whereas, talking about the economic value, and we removed the word undocumented or something like that from the resolution, and that, it has resulted in an economic value to the local economy is the language we went with. That's in the resolution. If there's any discussion, we can have it right now, but I believe this was discussed at your last meeting in depth.
If there's no questions, could we get a motion, please?
So moved.
Support.
It has been moved and supported. All in favor, please signal by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next on the agenda is 11F2, request to adopt Resolution 2315 to cancel the June 26th, July 24th, and August 28th study session meetings. Joel?
Yeah, this is pretty straightforward. During the summer, the city organizes a food truck rally every Monday in downtown Allegan. We get 6 to 7 to 8 food trucks that descend on our downtown. Parker does a really good job bringing them in. You've requested that you cancel the second study session of each month, so you can partake in the food truck rally. So that's what this resolution does, is it cancels the June 26th, July 24th, and August 28th.
Any questions? You guys were gonna put up the tent. We decided you're still gonna do
Yes,
that, right?
we will still put up the tent.
Perfect. Yep, good.
Same spot.
Same spot right outside City Hall. That'll be easiest for staff. And by then, I think Locust will be getting close to being ripped up, so it'll be a little further away from the dirt.
I make a motion to adopt resolution 23.15.
I support.
It has been moved and supported. All in favor, please signal by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next is communications from city manager, council, and mayor. Staff, do you have it? Tracy, I guess we'll start down there with you. Do you have anything else for us? Thank you. Michaela? Parker? Joel?
This is more of a shot over the bow for council. That might be the wrong phrasing, but I need to make you aware of stuff. In the past 3 weeks, I have had a half a dozen people come up to me complaining that the city does not offer any kind of recycling program to their residents. Most recently was Friday night, and I encourage that resident to contact a couple council members that she knows. Before that was a resident who I connected with another resident, and I said, it'd be awesome if you guys just collect a petition, get 1,000 signatures, bring it to council. This ranges everything from just partaking in the county's recycling program, which I believe we had the solid waste coordinator come and present to you last year, to even looking at a single hauler system like Valley Township has. I understand, yes. But again, okay, so now the shot over the bow is the correct phrase I wanted to use for council. Don't be surprised if you have residents start coming to meetings saying, hey, we want to engage you on recycling. I know with the downtown amenities, what Parker's put together with the DDA and public spaces, we will have recycle cans as part of this, but just for bottles and cans with the little circle top. You know, that is part of the amenity package we're looking at. So we will do it downtown, but these are residents that live, you know, throughout the city, and they're city residents, not township residents. So a heads up for you, my friends.
Did they indicate that they'd be willing to haul that somewhere?
So
as-
one said yes, if we could just put a dumpster out at the DPW, because they go to Broken Arrow because they're part of the county system, and then sometimes they can get in and do it, and then other times it's like, show us the card. And I guess the county just did an electronic one, countywide, where you could take your TVs and stuff down in Plainwell, but they got turned away at that one because they didn't have their recycle card. I know several years ago, probably 2010, 11, 12, the city participated, but for some reason, the city got away from participating in that program at that time.
I think it was because the garbage companies, Republic has recycling.
They do, at a cost. A much higher cost than what you do through the county is what I'm being told.
I do it through my normal service.
Yes, by these residents. So I'm just letting you know, you have residents that are coming up to me, cornering me at restaurants and when I'm out and about town, and I've encouraged them, engage your council members. They are your constituents.
Thank you, Joel. Bill, do you have anything?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
I
Dave?
do, but I can't remember.
Uh-oh.
It's on my book someplace.
Dave, do you?
Thanks.
Thanks. Delora? Of course.
I do. I just have one. I guess, request, and this would be up to full council whether or not they agree. But I've always found it very helpful on reports when, if there's an expenditure request, that it says whether it is in the budget or if it requires a budget adjustment. And I think if we could please make that a priority, because it's really helpful to know, and then we can, if we want to individually keep track of what budget adjustments we've approved, we've got that right there. So that's just a suggestion or a recommendation that I have. I don't know how everyone else feels about that.
That would be helpful. We've had, that a few times has come through on there, but it's not always.
So you like to see that in the actual report, not in the attached purchase order, correct?
I would like to see that in the report, please.
Excellent. The department heads talked about that this morning at Tracy's behest. She was like, we have to do a better job.
There you go.
So, very much so, we can, make that a requirement in the reports.
Mike, do you have anything tonight?
I don't know if I've just noticed it more or there are more vehicles with a missing headlight, without turn signals, without lights, and if our police department could do a repair and report ticket on those, then there would be no ticket or points or anything, and the roads would be safer and better, and just a notice.
Thank you, Mike. Peter, do you have anything?
Nothing today.
Thank you. Roger?
I just wanted to note the visit a group of us did to the 100 Leafs on Friday. Got to see their setup and the very beginnings of their growing. I think we were all very impressed with the place and the people. I just felt like some questions got thrown out at some of the technicians working there, and I was impressed with their knowledge of how this system works. It's very involved, and so it was just really cool to welcome them to the city, and I think there's a plan for, I don't know, 4 or 6 months out that we'll get to go back when all the plants are growing.
Years.
Why are you grinning, Roger?
I don't know, I thought there might be a gift bag when we leave or something.
They were very, very cordial to us, I do have to say that, and I was very interested in it. I was surprised that they start little 6 to 12-inch plants in little red Solo cups. I mean, this,
Exactly.
this $1 million operation, and they're using red Solo cups, so I'm with you, Raj, that it was very nice. That's all I really have. I don't have anything else, so. It is 7:58. We will adjourn the meeting for tonight. Thank you, everyone.